Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this webinar organized by Dr. Lal Path Labs. We'll be starting in a couple of minutes.
Ma'am, we can start now.
Yeah. Good afternoon to everybody. I welcome all the attendees for this weekend session, webinar session of Dr. Lal Path Laboratories. Dr. Lal Path Lab has its presence across the country with numerous satellite labs. The National Reference Laboratory is situated in New Delhi, and the focus in this season is for the South Zone Reference Laboratory that is being established in Bengaluru. I have recently joined as Head of Lab Operations, Bengaluru Lab. Most of the labs across India are NABL accredited. The National Reference Lab is also CAP accredited. And their presence is across all metros and Tier 1 and Tier 2 cities. And the beauty of this organization is that it is so digitally advanced, whether it is to order a sample, pick up, or to reach out to the reporting doctor. Everything is on a digital platform, and this makes it a lot easier in this integrated and new era. So the Bangalore Reference Laboratory is located in Marathalli. This was already a pre-existing laboratory with a fairly wide test menu, and we have augmented it with numerous new departments and augmented the test menu as well. So we intend to cater to the entire South Zone of India. Spread across 12,000 square feet along in one floor. This is a truly integrated laboratory in every sense. There is almost near complete automation where there is a minimal human interference, and we are backed by a very proficient team who are accessible as and when is needed. Today's webinar is about autoimmune disorders in neurology. As niche the subject is, we have very eminent speakers to talk about the disease, both the diagnostic aspect as well as some of the treatment and other approach to these diseases. In the past 2 decades, we have seen a lot of progress in understanding the autoimmune nature of several diseases, including myasthenia gravis or multiple sclerosis or Guillain-Barré syndrome, which have characteristic clinical courses and symptoms, and they can be diagnosed the right way. So it is with great pride that I want to tell you we have a Center of Excellence in the National Reference Laboratory with a complete array of testing for these disorders. And we have with us Dr. Ajay Gupta, who is heading this elite center. who is and who has a vast experience in this field of autoimmune disorders. He was formerly associated with the SRL laboratory, and also prior to that, he was at Metro Hospitals, Gurugram. He holds a number of positions, like he was the past secretary of the Indian Medical Association. He was the vice president of the Association of Practicing Pathologists in Haryana. He has contributed to a number of journals, and he has been a guest speaker on various platforms. We also have with us Dr. Joshi, who is a very renowned and well-known neurologist in the city of Bengaluru. He has graduated from the Davangere Medical College and has finished his DM at the renowned NIMHANS in the year 1986, and currently is practicing in Brian's Hospital, Bangalore. He was also the HOD of neurology in Satya Sai Hospital, and has spent a good number of years in Abu Dhabi as well. He is known for his holistic approach for treatment of neurological disorders, and has written multiple textbooks and contributed to journals as well. And uh, we are also proudly happy to tell you that he recommends Dr. Lalpath Labs for many of his testings. So over to Dr. Ajay Gupta to introduce us to the Center of Excellence at NRL. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Priya, and good afternoon to all. I welcome you all on the behalf of Dr. Lalpath Lab at the National Reference Lab. So I'll be speaking a brief about what we have got at the National Reference Lab, the Center for Excellence in Autoimmunity, and would be just giving an overview of the autoimmune diseases in context to the diagnostic modalities we have. So the Center for Excellence at the National Reference Lab, New Delhi. We all know the prevalence of various autoimmune diseases among the general population is on the steady rise across the globe. Autoimmune diseases are very difficult to diagnose, and lots of efforts are required and being invested in the field of diagnostics to have an earliest and the best possible diagnosis. In support of laboratory diagnosis, with the availability of best techniques, proper diagnosis of systemic and organ-specific diseases is a boon to both patients and clinicians, as it would help in the initiation of proper treatment and at a very early stage. It's very important to have the latest diagnostic modalities with cutting-edge technologies and to have the best of the laboratory techniques for the proper and accurate diagnosis. Our state-of-art Center for Excellence at NRL New Delhi in autoimmune diagnostics maintains stringent quality norms as per both national and international guidelines. Availability of variety of techniques like IF, immunoblot, ELISA, chemiluminescence, and radioimmunoassay. So we have got the next generation technology, that is the automation in ANA, dsDNA, and ANCA. It's the next generation recent advancement which is available at NRL with excellent TAT, that's the turnaround time, best quality reporting with the incorporation of IF photographs in all the positive ANA samples. Widest parameters in the ANA profile, 15 antigens, 18 antigens, and 23 antigens. For the 23 antigens, we are covering both organ as well as systemic autoimmune disease. So post a positive ANA, we are going for an ANA profile, and if ANA is strongly positive, then we can order an ANA profile. We have got 15, 18, and 23 antigens. Small vessel vasculitis, ANCA vasculitis, is a marker for Wegener's microscopic cholangitis. So as per gold standard, we have got both ELISA as well as IF. Autoimmune liver disease, diagnosis of autoimmune liver disease, including the detection of antibodies against various liver antigens, anti-mitochondrial antibody, anti-smooth muscle antibody. We have got the LKM for type 1, type 2 autoimmune hepatitis, and various specific antibodies via immunofluorescence, ELISA, and blot. Autoimmune autoimmune GI, then the diagnosis of celiac disease using two different techniques, IF and ELISA. In ELISA, we have got TTG, DGP. For IF, we have got anti-endomysial antibody, and the correlation of both the techniques offer a better quality of results. Autoimmune diseases in context to skin, we have got a complete range for the diagnosis of bullous autoimmune dermatosis. For the musculoskeletal system, we have got a diagnostic panel for autoimmune inflammatory myopathies. For autoimmune renal diseases, for the diagnosis of primary membranous glomerulonephritis and anti-glomerular basement membrane disease, variety of panels we are having. Now coming on to autoimmune neurology, which is today's topic. Now, with the discoveries of antibodies targeting the surface of neuronal or glial cells, there has been an important enhancement in the diagnostic and therapeutics opportunities in autoimmune neurology. More than 25 new types of autoantibodies have been described so far. Antibody-associated neurological diseases are characterized by various symptoms, including memory impairment, behavioral problems, seizures, psychosis, and movement disorders. Now, the pathology and pathophysiology, pathogenesis is very difficult to understand, but the development of autoantibodies in neurological disease may occur as a result of non-autoreactive B cells. They are transformed into activated B cells through a massive somatic hypermutation. In parallel, the T cells are also activated, can be activated by a virus or some unrelated antigens. Then activated B cells, they switch and become the plasmablast, and they secrete autoantibodies. Also, these are strongly associated with HLA haplotypes, suggesting genetic contribution too. Studies have shown that 90% of the patients with LG1 are positive for HLA-DRB71, whereas patients with Caspr2 antibodies have a clear representation of HLA-BR1 1101. Now, these are the surface proteins targeting CNS autoantibodies, underlining the autoantibody-mediated neurological disease for aquaporins, NMDAs, LG1, Caspr, GABA, and so on. So I will be brushing through all the autoimmune neurological diseases. In a nutshell, myasthenia gravis, we all know it's an incurable autoimmune disease resulting in the weakness and fatigue. The disease occurs at any age, but yes, more common in women younger than 40 and men older than 60. We have got two important diagnostic modalities which are there as far as lab diagnosis is concerned: anti-acetylcholine receptors antibody and anti-MuSK, that is the muscle-specific kinase antibody. Both are very reliable, 85% of the sensitivity for ACH receptor antibody and 40 to 50% with ocular myasthenia gravis for anti-MuSK antibodies. Multiple sclerosis, now it's a chronic inflammatory demyelinating disease of the brain and spinal cord. It's a lifelong disease which has got no cure. The body attacks and destroys the fatty tissue called the myelin, and the damage is very severe. It destroys the nerve and the axons. And we have got different diagnostic modalities testing for CSF IgG and oligoclonal bands CSF. It is positive in approximately 80% of the patients with multiple sclerosis. But the combination of using of CSF IgG index and oligoclonal band, the sensitivity raises to more than 90%. Paraneoplastic syndromes, now these are very important. These are the group of conditions that affects the nervous systems in patients with cancer. Now, paraneoplastic neurological syndromes can manifest in different ways, can present in psychiatric, can present with ataxia, neuropathy, and so on. So, the diagnosis is a bit tough. Yes, you require a clinical examination, laboratory test, imaging, all there. But we have got the blood test as well as the CSF examination. And antibodies are present in about 60% of the patients with paraneoplastic disorders. And some of the important antibodies are anti-HU, anti-ampifycin, CV2, and so on. So we have got a specific panel for this. Neuromyelitis optica, it's an autoimmune disorder with immune system cells and the antibodies, they attack the optic nerves and the spinal cord. Very important to understand the role of anti-aquaporin 4. Neuromyelitis optica occurs from a specific attack on the aquaporin 4 water channels, which are located in the optic nerve and the spinal cord. So the diagnosis is based on both laboratory as well as the radiological investigation. We need to test for CSF, and we'll see the raised oligoclonal bands, and we will see huge numbers of polymorphonuclear leukocytes. Anti-NMO antibody we are having, it's seen in more than 90% specific and 75% sensitive. NMDA receptor encephalitis, it is an N-methyl D-aspartate receptor encephalitis. Now, this disease typically affects young women, causing acute inflammation of the brain. Now, symptoms can be fever, headache, confusion, seizures, and all. Neurological features, and very important to know that autoimmune encephalitis also presents with neuropsychiatric symptoms: depression, anxiety, fear, attention deficit, compulsive disorders, anorexia, and all. So the diagnosis is a bit tough. We have got a complete range of panel for the diagnosis of autoimmune encephalitis, and the panels include the NMDA, the AMPA, the GABA, LG1, and the Casper. So we have got a complete range of panels. NMDA, you can see, seen more commonly in 80% of the women, AMPA 90% of the women, GABA then 50% of the women, LG1 65%. So both men and women are affected, but the percentage of the presence of antibody is quite different. So the panel of the autoimmune encephalitis panel, it detects the autoantibodies against the cell surface and the synaptic antigens involved in causing the brain illness, which also results in neuropsychiatric symptoms. So that was in brief for about more common autoimmune neurological disorders. So thank you. I hand over to Dr. Joshi.
Good evening, and thank you, Dr. Lalpath Labs and Dr. Priya for the introduction, and Dr. Ajay for making it easy for me now to start on autoimmune neurology. So the topic today is about a holistic approach. So hopefully you will enjoy that holistic part which I'm interested in and I'm working on from the past couple of years. So in neurology practice, we have, epilepsy, stroke, Parkinsonism, dementia, and so on. And with the discovery of these autoantibodies, it's like, so in the past, see 10 antibody in 30 years. Now what is happening is 30 antibodies in 10 years. So that is the speed with which the new antibodies are being discovered. And so new diseases and new treatment modalities are coming in. So now so the autoimmune neurology is born as a subspecialty now. They have fellowships in autoimmune neurology. Mayo Clinic was leading. In India, Amrita Hospital at Kochi has the best reference lab for autoimmune neurology. And now we have autoimmune epilepsy, autoimmune Parkinsonism, autoimmune encephalitis, and so on. So I'll touch upon some of these with these aspects. So why we are excited about autoimmune is it becomes more treatable and reversible. So there are side by side autoimmune genetic also is advancing very fast. So we have genetic diagnostics which is coming up for many neurological disorders, and so it's becoming more treatable and in autoimmune it's becoming reversible also if detected early. So it's like finding
Voice.
Dr. Joshi, can you just check your voice? It's not coming. No, we can't hear you. Just click on that voice button once again and come back.
So you can leave the room and you can join back again using the same link. So you need. Hello, sir. Hello. Voice is not coming again. Okay, sir. You can. I am sending your link in the message. You can check the message and join from the mobile.
Zainab, I think there's a red color button with 3 dots in which if we click, there's written on air. We need to click on that. If Dr. Joshi can do this, there is a red block in the side with the 3 dots, white dots. You can click on this, and on the top you will see on air with a microphone symbol. And you have to select the
hello.
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Great.
Yeah. Okay. So I was saying the autoimmune neurology is like finding color in the world of gray, and So everyday questions that patient asks, like I have seen a neurologist, but the treatment is not effective. And what is causing my symptoms? And the doctor says diagnosis is not clear. So why did this neuro condition happen to me? What are the chances that I can pass this to my children? So is there a more effective treatment? Can it be cured? So these questions were the ones which led me to this holistic neurology as a new hope for our neuro patients. So this is something, is integrated approach to healing. And it's created by a practicing neurologist. And it starts with a regular neurology consultation, testing and treatment. So that would include autoantibody testing, genetic testing, so that you get a deeper level of diagnosis and treatment. Then we go to the next step, which is finding the source of autoimmunity. For example, the leaky gut and the immunoinflammation. And then we go to the source of that as chronic stress and vagus nerve activation. We may not have time to speak on all this, but this is the outline of holistic approach. Then we have quantum healing techniques and consciousness-based healing, and which we don't have time to address upon. I'll just cover as much as I can. So this holistic program is built on two words, that is finding the source of the problem and what is the access to the healing methods. So now you know that Parkinson disease, there's a gut-brain axis, and intestinal inflammation could be a silent driver of Parkinson's disease pathogenesis. So a lot of work is being done by, being able to diagnose Parkinson's from skin biopsies and gut, even before it manifests as neurodegeneration. And if you look at the mechanisms of immune injury, we know that the tumor in the body can, initiate the immune reaction, or it could be viruses, or it could be idiopathic. So what I'm trying to say here is that maybe our gut could be a source for some of these neurological immune conditions. So there is something called as leaky gut syndrome. Now it is more and more accepted in the mainstream, and it could be the source of immunoinflammation. So the leaky gut means that the undigested food particles and toxins, they go into the bloodstream, and there is a inflammatory response to the intruders, and this inflammation spreads to the whole body. So now we have this new testing for food intolerance. They can test 221 food items, and these IgG food antibodies probably trigger this immune reaction in the gut. So to give you an example, I'll show you one case. I saw, 7-year-old girl from Calcutta. She had optic neuritis, and it was MOG positive. And she had full recovery with steroids, and she's currently on long-term immunotherapy. And I have a habit of looking at food intolerance, and I was so surprised to find, you can see that she's only 7 years old, and how come she is intolerant to, she has antibodies to milk products and to eggs and to so many things. Generally, what I see is, as you see, older patients tend to have more of antibodies against the food items that you take regularly. But this 7-year-old, I was really surprised to have this. So part of our treatment that we advise her would be to avoid these immunoinflammation by avoiding these foods, which could be triggering the immune response. So also, Lalpath has a very good test called gastric panel. It's more or less a recent one to check out, the markers. You can understand the parietal cell function from this, and whether there is any chronic gastritis. You can also make out reflux disease and even H. pylori, from just a blood test. So it's quite handy for us to look at this gastric panel. So part of our holistic treatment would involve, tips for gut health. So belly breathing is a very important exercise, otherwise called as diaphragmatic breathing. And how it works is through vagus nerve activation. And we don't have time to go for this topic, which is very, very useful thing for chronic stress. And of course, exercise and food intolerance and avoiding the 5 culprits, that is 5 white poisons, as we call maida, white rice, white salt, white sugar, and excess milk, and eliminate the toxins and infections. And probiotics may worsen the SIBO. SIBO is a small bowel overgrowth of bacteria. And check and correct B12, vitamin D, and incorporate broths and rest to the diet, stress reduction, and fiber. How do you know you're taking fiber daily, enough fiber? Look at the stools. It should be an S or a C. So we should start, looking at these patients holistically. Now, coming to inflammation, what I do is, first thing I write is the CRP and HSCRP. So CRP gives us an idea about acute infections and acute inflammation. And if it is chronic inflammation, the HSCRP will be high. So now you know that this HSCRP is a marker for metabolic syndrome, heart attack, and stroke, which leads to heart attack and stroke. So, the metabolic syndrome, which is the belly fat, along with hypertension, diabetes, and hyperlipidemia, is at the source of, and it's the chronic stress hormone, which is corticosteroid, and which causes these beer belly or the abdominal obesity. So it's like taking steroid every day. That is how the tummy comes out. And so the heart attack and strokes, the risk factor is mainly metabolic syndrome, and the source of which is the chronic stress. And the source of chronic stress is actually emotional reaction or fear, and it's the survival mechanism and unfortunately the human condition. So here I make a distinction between acute stress versus chronic stress. Acute stress, we are aware. Unfortunately, chronic stress, we are not aware. And it's the real silent killer. Now, you see, autoimmune disease, actually there are 3 components. There is genetic susceptibility, and of course the environment, which consists of the diet and viral infections, bacteria, and the immune regulation disrupted by leaky gut and all this put together is responsible for the autoimmune disease. Now here it's a very important slide. there's a distinction between auto-inflammatory disorders and autoimmune disorders. So auto-inflammatory disorders are like neurobechetes, Mediterranean fever, even acne, some of the pyogenic arthritis, Crohn's disease. These are all auto-inflammatory disorders. And it's a problem with the innate immunity or the general immunity. Now we have, you can diagnose these. These are becoming more and more important now, especially in pediatric practice. And lot of neurological conditions are part of these autoinflammatory disorders. And diagnosis is by the autoinflammatory disease gene panel. So around 33 genes are being screened. And in the US, you have those gene panels. It's not yet available in India. And I want Lalpath lab to be the first ones to create this autoinflammatory diagnostic gene panel. Now, coming to the autoimmune, these are myasthenia gravis, autoimmune encephalitis, NMO, anti-ganglioside neuropathies. You know, this is to do with the specific immune system or the adaptive immunity. And we have various autoimmune panels that Dr. Ajay showed us. And treatment also, treatment approach is different. See here, you go for anti-cytokine, TNF, and here the therapy is very, very specific, like anti-B cell, T cell targeted, like rituximab and so on. See here is a patient whom I saw, is 23-year-old male with recurrent oral ulcers, cerebral venous thrombosis, polycythemia, homocysteine was high and B12 was low. And so we were looking for an autoinflammatory disorder. Since we don't have the specific panel for that, we did a whole exome sequencing. And we found that he has this gene, you know, which is a FASLG gene, which is a member of TNF family. So it's consistent with an autoimmune lymphoproliferative syndrome type 1B. So now we look at this bar on the left side. You know, here you have autoinflammatory in blue and autoimmune in green, and it is bridging. So the autoinflammatory and autoimmune are bridging. And here we have the myeloid series. You know, in the bone marrow we have the myeloid series from which the neutrophils, lymphocytes, and all come, and then in the lymphoid, you have the plasma cells, B cells, T cells, and so on. So what is happening is you have to find out, is it autoinflammatory pure or autoimmune pure, or is it a mixture? So depending upon that, you will be able to decide on the treatment. For example, this given patient with oral ulcers, I would go for anti-TNF. So we are somewhere here in the middle. So anti-TNF, that will be a good choice for him. If it is pure autoinflammatory, you can use colchicine, then interleukin-1 antagonist becoming more and more popular. And you see the role of steroids here. Steroid is like pan, you know, that's why it works, and it's the first line of treatment in most of the our autoimmune disorders in neurology, and it works broad spectrum. Interestingly, if you go look at the new classification of SLE, you will find something like this. You know, it starts from autoinflammatory and to autoimmune. So we don't have time to discuss too much on this. So as you come down, you can see autoimmune is become more and more specific. Like rituximab just deletes the B cells, B20 cells. So it's that specific you get. So now looking at the disease and sin, you have an edge. You can have you know, an approach to which therapy will be using, you'll be using in these conditions. Now, just to touch upon the methodology of neural autoantibody evaluation, I'll make it very brief. So we have the self-surface antigens, intracellular and intracellular cytoplasmic. You can see the treatment response is easier with antibody-mediated than with cell-mediated and tumor association from this. And the various antibodies are also listed here. Three basic research techniques are tissue-based assay, cell-based assay, and immunoprecipitation. So tissue-based assay is mouse brain tissue sections such as hippocampus and cerebellum are stained with the patient's serum or CSF by indirect immunofluorescence. Sometimes you may not be able to get known antibodies. Sometimes you can end up with getting unknown antibodies also in this. So that is why the importance of the lab being a reference lab and is like a problem-oriented lab, not to test only the things that we know, but we need to know what else is happening, because there are many disorders wherein the antibodies are not yet discovered or not yet known. It's an example of a tissue immunofluorescence assay. So diagnostic steps to detect known and unknown antibodies. So this will be the difference between sending the sample to a commercial lab versus a reference lab, wherein they try to figure out the unknown antibodies also and study them in detail and give us a feedback on them. So I hope that Lalpath develops a lab like this, like in Amrita or like in Mayo Clinic, and give us a lot of unanswered questions, because it's like 1/3 of the times we make a clinical diagnosis of autoimmune encephalitis, but we don't get anything positive. All the tests will remain negative. So we want more help in that area actually. So general principles about this antibody testing: none of the immunological tests are perfect. Some are worse than others. Some are useless unless done in the right context. And there is a lot of variation in performance characteristics between methods within the same methods. And there are also surrogate biomarkers like bystander antibodies versus pathogenic antibodies, physiological antibodies. So all these issues are there, and the issues of sample handling and storage. These IgG molecules are stable in room temperature up to only 48 hours in cool weather. So this can be a real issue in hot weather in India. So always transport in cool containers in dry ice. So at 4 degrees, it's stable for 2 weeks, and at -20, it's stable for 6 months. And avoid thawing and freezing. And long-term storage is at -80. So in summary, the oligoclonal bands have a place in MS diagnosis and management. And NMO antibody and aquaporin for serum is better than CSF. There's no need to do CSF to check for NMO antibody and even MOG antibody. Now, NMDA receptor antibody, serum and CSF is mandatory. So you need to admit the patient, do an LP and send CSF and serum. And this ganglioside antibodies of Lalpath I have been using quite a bit, and they are a little tricky. You have to be very careful and do always clinical correlation to interpret this. Anti-GAD antibodies, they say it's poor standardization, and you need a dedicated lab with expertise. and the immunological tests are not straightforward. So now let's look at the clinical context. So now in autoimmune encephalopathy, there's various ways of looking at it. Anatomical classification, depending upon the structure involved, like limbic, cortical, striatal, diencephalic. So from that, you can get clues. And or you can go for etiological classification, idiopathic, paraneoplastic, post-infectious, iatrogenic. Now more and more, this immune checkpoint inhibitors, the things are causing autoimmune encephalitis. And there is a serological classification based on what antibody you see. So these are the anatomical subtypes of autoimmune encephalitis. You can see limbic encephalitis, medial temporal lobe involvement. It's also called as limbic encephalitis. Many times you may not get an antibody positive. I have currently a patient who has limbic encephalitis. We did the autoimmune panel from Lalpath, it was negative. We repeated it again from Nimans, it was negative. And we are now currently on cyclophosphamide, not responding to the other immunotherapies. Then we have cortical, subcortical encephalitis, striatal encephalitis, diencephalic encephalitis, that is about NMO you have to suspect, and brainstem encephalitis, and meningoencephalitis. This is the GFAP. When you have like meningitis-like picture, you have to think of GFAP, antibody-related meningitis. So these are the various types of encephalitis and the antibodies involved. So brainstem, cerebellar, it can involve any part of the nervous system actually, central as well as peripheral. So for clinical approach, for the phenotypes, like if it is encephalopathic or neuropsychiatric onset, you think of NMDA. If it is pure psychiatric, it could be NMDA. If you find that faciobrachial dystonic seizures, that is LGI1. And if it is predominantly epileptic, think of GABA or AMPA. And with movement disorder, you think of dopamine receptor, glycine receptor antibodies. And there we have peripheral syndromes like neuropathy, neuronopathy, autonomic neuropathy, then myasthenia, neuromuscular junction, and myopathy, various myopathies. So this is a 26-year-old female with limb girdle weakness, not much of ptosis, and acetylcholine receptor antibody is negative. So this could be tough to diagnose initially, but luckily the Musk antibody was positive, as you see here. So this is the diagnostic protocol for autoimmune encephalitis. First, confirm focal or multifocal brain pathology, suggestive of autoimmune encephalitis. So the EEG will help. Sometimes we find characteristic brush delta appearance. Then MRI, if it is negative, you can go for PET-CT. And second, confirm the inflammatory etiology and rule out other possibilities. So lumbar puncture will help for that. And blood tests, including serum neuronal autoantibodies. And of course, the third step would be to screen for neoplasm cancer with the best would be a whole body PET-CT. Now, treatment-wise, similarly, not all the autoimmune encephalitis respond to immunotherapy equally. So the steroid responsive ones are the one with LGI1, with the faciobrachial dystonic seizures. Then for the autoimmune encephalitis, you have this the cancer treatment side effect, the one they also respond to steroids. Central demyelination, GFAP will respond. Clipper syndrome mainly seen in the brainstem. And time to time we see the Hashimoto's thyroiditis also respond very well to steroids. So relative contraindications to steroids include uncontrolled hypertension, uncontrolled diabetes, acute peptic ulcer, severe behavioral symptoms that worsen with corticosteroid therapy. And you need to remember about when you give IVIG, immunoglobulin treatment, that there is high thromboembolic risk, cancer, smoking history, hypertension, diabetes, which is there. Don't give IVIG because of hypercoagulable states. NMDA receptor encephalitis are the most frequent single cause of encephalitis under the age of 30 years. So it's not considered rare anymore. Previously we used to have a child or a young person admitted with status epilepticus, encephalitis, and MRI could be negative also, and CSF may not show anything specific, and we call it just viral encephalitis and treat them. And sometimes they die, sometimes they recover. So most of these cases probably are autoimmune encephalitis. Supposed to look for all the antibodies and the workup. So new onset psychosis. Now at least a lot of psychiatrists they are aware of autoimmune encephalitis more and more, and they are referring some of the cases which do not respond to treatment and new onset of psychosis without family history. To always keep autoimmune encephalitis in mind, and especially the NMDA receptor. And if treated early, they respond very well. There's a book on this NMDA receptor, Brain on Fire. It's written by a journalist who actually had this condition, and she was in coma for weeks. And when she came out and she was treated fully normalized, she wrote this book. It's become the bestseller, Brain on Fire. You can check it in Amazon. So when to suspect now movement disorder. Now is a long list of antibodies in movement disorders. See characteristic syndromes like faciobrachial dystonic seizures. You think of LGI1, leg myoclonus Casper2, and orofacial dyskinesias, altered sensorium, NMDA, and phenylistic movements in sleep. Sleep means acting out in sleep. In NREM sleep, you think of Iglon. And painful tonic spasms. I have videos to show, but this session I don't think we'll be able to show all those things. So think of NMO. This is a study from Amrita. They found there were 10 cases of atypical Parkinsonism turned out to have an autoimmune basis. They responded to immunotherapy. So this is the faciobrachial dystonic seizures when one side arm and the face contracts at the same time. This classical syndrome, you can easily suspect LGI1 antibody in this case. So when to suspect movement disorder with neuronal antibodies? Red flags are hyponatremia, episodic bradycardia, sleep disorders, then long-lasting diarrhea, headache, blurred vision, new symptoms after recent herpes simplex encephalitis. We know that after herpes simplex encephalitis, they can go on to develop NMDA receptor encephalitis. So these are some of the clues to suspect. So this long list of the movement disorder, which movement disorder, and which antibody related, long list. This article, you can go through that. Now coming to autoimmune epilepsy. So how to know when it's autoimmune epilepsy? So healthy people with new onset seizures, EEG clinical with multifocal. If it is a multifocal onset, then think of autoimmune epilepsy. Highly recurrent seizures, status not responding to two drugs. Then autoimmune panel, paraneoplasty plan, send serum and CSF. Don't wait for reports. Start IVMP, IVIG. IVMP is methylprednisolone. So by the time the reports come, you can think of they are not responding, you can go in for IVIG or plasma exchange. MRI may be normal, and screening for cancer with whole body PET CT is recommended. So in a recent study, 81% of the patients diagnosed with autoimmune epilepsy experienced significant improvement with immunotherapy. So that is a thing of beauty, that we can help these patients much better than before. So autoimmune epilepsy, the type of syndromes and autoantibodies, and the clinical features are given here. Some of them respond very well to treatment. Autoimmune myelopathies. So this, most of us already know. We have three things. One is NMO, MOG, and MS. So depending upon the characteristic appearance, you can see NMO is a long segment. See this red long segment, and middle is the MOG is mostly lower down, conus region is affected, and multiple sclerosis is always scattered. So the lesion distribution in MS, NMO versus MOG, you can see the differences. Now, autoimmune visual loss, optic neuritis, autoimmune retinopathies. So it's a differential diagnosis of autoimmune visual loss. It could be MS, NMO, MOG, ganglioside, or other autoimmune disorders can also cause vasculitis and optic neuritis. So characteristic from the MRI, sometimes we can predict that we are dealing with MOG if you see a pattern like this, usually bilateral. Sometimes could be asymmetrical, but bilateral. And NMO always involves a chiasm. And multiple sclerosis will be always one at a time. So why you need to know is treatment. Because for MOG, if you try to taper off the steroids, then they tend to recur. So you need to go on a longer taper and probably long immunotherapy for MOG. You have the anti-GAD65, so it's positive in stiff person syndrome, in cerebellar ataxias, sometimes limbic encephalitis, diabetes. So it's more like a non-specific thing, and you have to be careful to interpret. But it helps in the sense there's autoimmune process going on. And some of you may not have heard about autoimmune pain. The pain works in some symbiosis with the immune system. So we have these regional pain syndromes, like RSD, or that, they found that they are very difficult to treat. And they have found that IVIG could be useful. I've treated a couple of patients with IVIG and found good response. So immune system pain regulation. So autoimmune pain can be also associated with some of these neuromyotonias, Morven syndrome, severe pain. Casper can have severe lower limb pain. So some of these autoantibody related autoimmune pain can be very refractory to treatment, like failed gabapentin, amitriptyline, carbamazepine, and they respond to IVIG and immunotherapy. This new information about widespread inflammation in the brains of fibromyalgia patients. Every one of us sees these type of patients with body aches, somatic symptom disorder, chronic back pain. So they can have widespread inflammation in the brains also. Ganglionic acetylcholine receptor antibody not yet available in India, but is useful for POTS, that is partial tachycardia syndromes. And they also have an autoimmune basis and they respond to immunotherapy. Diagnostic evaluation, this start with a MRI and whole body PET CT. Most of the time we end up doing whole body PET CT. What you need to remember is the PET will be unable to detect gonadal tumors, ovary and ovary teratomas. And MRI has got good sensitivity for both ovarian and thymic tumors. Now there is MRI negative multiple sclerosis or NINJA. You have to do DTI in these cases. So diagnostic evaluation, always videotape these patients before and after treatment, so you know the progress. And of course the blood workup. Extensive workup is required, so a lot of money, patients have to spend on all these tests are still very expensive. And if you want to plan for immunosuppression, you need to do this, quantiferon gold to rule out any TB, transplant viral panel, any viruses hiding in the nervous system, and lumbar puncture study, of course. So these are the various panels that are actually done in Mayo Clinic, actually. Now coming to treatment, time is brain. So timing of immunotherapy is very important. Early immunotherapy, better outcome. And don't delay in initiating immunotherapy while waiting for results of antibody tests or cancer tests. Now, immunotherapy can be acute or long-term. So we have first step will be methylprednisolone followed by IVIG, plasma exchange, rituximab, and IV cyclophosphamide. In the long term, we have azathioprine or MMF, methylprednisolone, small dose, and maintenance rituximab and oral cyclophosphamide. So the at Mayo Clinic approach, video clips before and after treatment, IVMP for 5 days. If the response is good, autoimmune encephalitis likely, diagnostic and therapeutic test. In case of diabetes or GAD65, then straight away go to IVIG, skip methylprednisolone. Plasma exchange
Dr. Joshi, we again cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, please.
Okay. So I'm almost done. I like to choose azathioprine because it has got less of problems compared to mycophenolate. And you can easily monitor the MC with MCV. The size of the RBCs will increase by 5 points. I don't like methotrexate. Now, of course, monoclonal antibodies, most effective in MS is alemtuzumab, but it has got bad side effects, expensive. And so the new generation of rituximab has come. But we are in India, we are all familiar and more experienced with rituximab, which is less expensive. So rituximab, there are various ways of giving rituximab as shown here. And nowadays they are saying even small doses, you can give 100 milligram once weekly also might work. Cyclophosphamide pulse therapy. And don't forget anti-inflammatory diet therapy. We have a special, nutritionist who's well versed in anti-inflammatory diet therapy. Remember, viral herpes simplex encephalitis can be followed by NMDA receptor encephalitis. So just to recap and take a breath. So neurology, autoimmune neurology, we go to the source of autoimmunity through food intolerance test. You can make out leaky gut syndrome. Then look at chronic inflammation through HSCRP. Look at any metabolic syndrome. Then look at chronic stress, chronic reverse polarity. We didn't have time to discuss these. And vagus nerve activation through yoga methods. You can have vagus nerve activation therapy, heart coherence, then anti-inflammatory diet therapy. You can use Ayurveda also for gut health. Then there is epigenetic interventions, consciousness-based healing, quantum healing, and ultimately, your chronic illness could be an opportunity for your personal transformation. So this is the gist of this holistic neurology. So I have a website called holistic-neurology.com. So you can visit our website, creates value for you. You can download some of the course materials. So I end by acknowledging Zenabna's manager, Medico, Dr. Lalpath Lab. And I would like to acknowledge Barsha, who is my single point contact for Dr. Lalpath Lab. He made my life so easy. I just need to know one phone number. I give it to patients, and this kind of thing works very well for busy clinicians, where a lot of saving time with a single point contact. So I hope the marketing people, instead of running around, just have one single point contact for the physicians. So thank you for listening. For listening is an act of love. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Joshi. That was indeed an explicit, elaborate overview of autoimmune neurological diseases. And we get to learn that epigenetics is the root of almost every disease. Last week we had something on allergies, and we learned there that epigenetics is the cause for allergies and now autoimmune diseases as well. And I think with your guidance and Dr. Ajay Gupta being at the helm of affairs of the Center of Excellence for Autoimmune Neurological Diseases, we will be able to establish more testing for neurological diseases. Thank you so much. And I would like to know if I don't find any questions in the chat box as of now. So are there any questions that we may have for Dr. Joshi or even Dr. Ajay?
There's a question: under what all conditions paraneoplastic antibody panel is useful?
Okay, I can't see it. Okay.
Yeah, it's basically for when the patient presents with an autoimmune condition, to find out the cause for that, you screen for cancer. So yeah, it's very useful for many of the cancers in the body. So if you find any positive, then you'll have to go in for PET CT to look at which cancer where and all that. So removing that cancer is very important in the treatment of autoimmune condition caused by that paraneoplastic. Any other questions? Can be very difficult to differentiate between autoimmune and viral encephalitis sometimes. That is why we have so much of help from these labs, wherein we send PCR test for herpes simplex encephalitis. Now we have PCR for the entire RNA virus panel is there. You have a very nice test called BioFire. BioFire. I would say you should go for BioFire Advantage, which includes TB also in that. So the common neurological viruses is included, bacteria is included, fungal is included, and it's FDA approved now. Earlier we used to have this Exciton in Bangalore. They also genetically based company, and they do PCR for most of the viruses. And of course, you need to send for autoimmune panel. But I would say many times you will not get anything positive, either autoimmune or viral. But you'll have to go by clinical and give the best. So what we do is we start them on antiviral, we start them on immunotherapy as well. So that's the way to go about it.
Dr. Joshi, we have BioFire in the Bangalore lab itself right now.
Yeah.
And so you will expect a shorter TAT also if at all you send it across. And many more tests are being developed in the Bangalore lab as well under the guidance of the HODs in R&D.
Seronegative rheumatoid arthritis can become hereditary risk to newborn baby. Exactly. That is where these autoinflammatory disorders are coming up, and it's genetic tests are there. I'm hoping that Lalpath will take up that and make a panel for autoinflammatory. It's becoming very, very important. Not many people are aware of it. Neither the specialists are aware of it. Maybe few of pediatricians in PGI and things like that, they're aware of it, and some 100 cases are being reported now from India, autoinflammatory disorders, and many of them are having neurological manifestations. GAD65 is evaluated in diabetes. How does it help in neuroimmunology? GAD65 has a strong association with some of the autoimmune neurology conditions like stiff person syndrome. You would have remembered stiff man syndrome, stiff person syndrome. It's and it's got also association with some of the limbic encephalitis. But the association is not very strong. It's a little tricky thing. So to be careful in interpretation. However, it does help in some of the cerebellar syndromes.
Please elaborate testing for autoimmune pain.
Testing for autoimmune pain in practice, when you find somebody has gone through surgery or injury and the pain doesn't go away, patient comes back after 3 months, 6 months, pain, and the operating surgeon tried to get rid of them, there's nothing wrong with the surgery. So that is a type of chronic pain. Means the nervous system is supposed to switch off acute pain after the threat is over. But somehow those circuits remain alive in the spinal cord as chronic pain. Now, some of these cases have some of the autoimmune antibodies positive, and few cases have been treated with IVIG with very good response, because it's very, very difficult to treat this type of pain, the regional pain syndromes, RSD, reflex sympathetic dystrophy, and so on. I have at least a couple of patients, with good response to IVIG, and it's quite safe to use that in these chronic pain syndromes. I think there's no further questions.
So if there are no further questions, I think we can end the session. Thank you so much, Dr. Joshi, for taking your so much time out and giving us a very elaborate session on the various neurological diseases. And thank you so much for propagating Dr. Lalpath Labs. We look forward to clinicians like you to develop more and more investigations and support us. Dr. Ajay, you have been very lucid about all the testing available at the a Center of Excellence at NRL. Thank you so much, and thank you for taking your time to join us for this session.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you, Zena, for organizing this. Thank you.
Thank you to all. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.